In this video, we will talk about parts of speech. We will discuss nouns and verbs. Now, you may say this is beginner level grammar or vocabulary, and you already know this. However, it doesn't really matter if it's beginner, pre-intermediate, or elementary. This is still a very common issue in IELTS writing and overall in IELTS as well. Even high-level candidates make a lot of mistakes when using nouns and verbs. So whether it's a low level or high level, this is an issue that stops a lot of people from getting the scores they need. And this problem should be solved. So we'll break each part of speech down one by one. All right, let's start from nouns. And when working with these parts of speech, we will be using examples from this graph, so it is connected with IELTS writing task 1. All right, first let's start from nouns. All right, so basically, what are nouns? The basic translation into Uzbek would be от. In Russian, that would be существительное. Вительное. All right, these words may not mean anything to you, but this is not a problem. We'll still try to understand this. All right, we use nouns to name things, anything, like door, desk, or in our case, we have numbers, right? Number. All right, we can use nouns to not describe, name places. For example, learning center, learning center, home. Or in our case, in this graph, we have shops. All right, that's a place here. Shop. Or I can also say shops. Doesn't matter. Can be singular, единственное число, биттalik, or could be plural, kopçilik, множественное число. Absolutely doesn't matter. All right, this could be people, right? Or person. So that could be mother, individual, visitor, guest. In our case, we don't have anybody. Yeah, that's all right. All right. Also, nouns can be ideas. And in brackets, I'm going to highlight a very important thing. And it is very important you understand that ideas can be abstract. So when I say abstract, that means something you cannot usually touch, or sometimes you cannot even see this thing, but it still exists. For example, love, money, economy, or in our case, closures, openings. Открытие, закрытие, açılış, yapılış is not a thing. You cannot touch it. And physically, you cannot see it. But it's still a noun. It's an idea, right? Abstract idea. So in our case, closures, openings, or very common in IELTS writing task 1, increase or decrease. If you have already watched the video, the most important words for trend graphs, you already know that increase and decrease can be both nouns and verbs. In our case, they can be nouns here. Kotarılış, shush. You cannot really touch this thing, but it still exists as a noun. Alright, if you still haven't watched that video, I highly recommend you watch it after this video. Now, let's understand what are verbs. Alright, so verbs, so basically that translates into fi'l. Probably one L here. In Russian, that would be gлагол. Again, let's make it simple. So basically verbs, they're simpler than nouns. So we use verbs to show an action, right? What can be an action? It can be something like run, swim, or in writing task 1, again, increase, decrease, remain stable, or change. This should be very straightforward. Now, verbs are also used for showing a state of being. Now, here it gets kinda tricky. Make sure you try to understand it as much as possible. So, state of being basically translates into bullish холаты, состояние бытия, как бы быть. This is tricky because something like this doesn't exist in Russian or Uzbek. It is only in English. So these are verbs like am, is, are, was, were, and will be. When I say verbs and nouns, don't think that they are always one word. That could be two words as well. For example, remain stable, we can count it in this video as one verb. Or here, learning center, we can count it as one noun. So mainly focus on the meaning, not simply the number of words or grammar. All right, I think it is clear when do we use actions. For example, I run, I swim to show that I am doing something, or somebody else, or something is doing something else. This is very clear. However, it may not be clear when do we use state of being. I think here an example will really help to make it clear. For example, I have something like I am big. So am here shows my state. Man холодом показывает мое состояние. Я большой. Более нарсан быть. Я являюсь большим. Мана более котте. If we translate it roughly. Now, you will not get it right away. You will not understand it immediately. It may take some time. All you gotta do is always pay attention when you use verbs of state of being like MSR, was, were, and will be, and always think, how are they helping to show a state here? Or for example, I at home. This is right now just a combination of words. If I put I am, this shows bullish, that I exist at home. Я являюсь. Я существую где-то, right? Without this, it's just not connected combination of words. All right, to make it even more obvious and even more clear, there is a little help here, which is more understandable. Now, always remember that we use verbs in English to show time. Okay, what do I mean here? For example, let's take the same sentence here. I am at home, and I will remove my state of being, or I will remove any verbs. I have noun, I have preposition, at, and I have noun, home. There is no verb. Now, how do I understand the time? Am I at home right now? Was I at home yesterday? Or I will be at home tomorrow? I don't know. There is no information here. In English, even if you put the word yesterday, it is still a mistake. So you gotta put a verb here to show the time. So if I say I am at home, that means right now I'm at home. If I say I was at home, it means in the past I was at home. And if I say I will be, not will be, I will be at home, it means in the future, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe next year, I will be at home. Without this, I cannot understand time. So always look at all the ideas you write in your essays, at all the sentences, and always check, do I have a verb that shows time? This is how you can figure if you skipped state of being verbs like MSR, or maybe you overuse them. What do I mean by overuse? As I said, we use any verbs to show time. This could be verbs like this also. Let's take one example here. Let's say we have closures, and let's say in 2011, not closures, openings. In 2011, openings dropped. Okay, let's get this. In 2011, the number of openings dropped. Now here you may say, should I use was here to show time? But as I said, any verb will do here. Any verb is enough here to show time. If I already have a verb, then I don't need to put state of being verb. This already shows time. Drop. It's in the past. It already shows that this happened in the past. Now, here it is very important you don't mix state of being verbs with action verbs. They are always separate. You never say was dropped. Yes, it is used, I know, in passive voice, but right now we're not talking about passive voice, and we don't really need passive voice for writing task one. So we're going to focus only on the things we need at this moment. So don't think about it for now. The number of openings dropped. It's already clear that I'm talking about past here. Right now, you may say, okay, you're saying I shouldn't put, let me highlight, I shouldn't put this together with this. And you may give me example here. You may say, how about this? What if somebody says, I am running? This is fully correct. I'm using state of being verbs together with action verbs. Why is it still correct? You just said that I cannot use them together. Yes, this is true. However, right now we'll break it down and I'll show why did I say that we shouldn't use them together. And this is a very, very common, very big issue that almost every candidate struggles with. Here we have ing, and ing is a very common problem. Now, to understand this, first, let's understand when do we use ing. Right now, you have to be very focused, and it is very important you fully understand this. Because again, if you open every single low-level essay, you will see problems with ing in every single one of them. All right, so there are two cases, two situations when we use ing. One case is when we use nouns with ing. We have a noun plus ing. Another case is when we use verb plus ing, but only in continuous form. And we'll break down each case right now. Let's start from nouns. So we use noun plus ing only when naming actions or activities. What I want to say here is that here harakatni o'zini emasdi, harakatni nomini aytayotganda noun plus ing. Не само действие, а название действия. Let me give example here. For example, running. Now, this is not action. This is the name of the action. Это не бегал, бегаю, буду бегать. Это бег. Bu yugurdim, yuguryapman, yuguraman emasdi. Yugurish. Harakatni nomi. Bo'ldi. That's it. So if it's the name of the action, yes, you will see ing and you will use ing. Running, swimming, buying, jumping, killing. However, you gotta be careful. You cannot use it with all words. There are some words where you don't add ing to turn them into nouns. So basically, you can look at this and tell me, this is a verb. So if I add ing to a verb, I'll get a noun. This is true, but not in all cases. For example, you cannot say increasing. It's not a noun. Noun for increase is increase. And you will see this in the video, the most important words for IELTS writing task 1, trend graphs. Those who have already watched it should be aware of this. Now, let me give an example here. For example, buying coffee was popular in Tashkent. Here, buying coffee is noun. Bu harakatni nomi, это название действия. Покупка кофе. Не покупал кофе, покупаю кофе, буду покупать кофе. Масты, а покупку кофе. Кофе sotib oldim, кофе sotib olman, кофе sotib olaman emasdi. Кофе sotib olish harakati nom. Кофе sotib olish tarqalgan edi Toshkentda. Покупка кофе была популярна в Ташкенте. That's it. And here I'm using was to show that it happened in the past. I'm using state of being. All right, let's go ahead here. Let's look at another case when we use ing. Another case is in continuous forms, in present continuous, past continuous, future continuous. In this video, I'm not going to explain those, but I'm going to say a very important thing here. In Ielts writing, both in writing task 1 and writing task 2, we don't usually use continuous forms. So if we look at the structure, so it's usually something like, let me get the verb run. I am running right now. I was running yesterday, and I will be running tomorrow. Now, in IELTS writing, almost nothing happens right now. And when talking about the past, in IELTS writing, we don't use past continuous. We use past simple. I ran. And again, we don't use future continuous. We use future simple. I will run. That's it. Yes, there are some cases when maybe you will need continuous, but they are very rare. And right now, if you have problems with ing, I don't recommend using this at all and avoiding continuous form at all costs, and always use simple forms and never continuous forms. So hopefully understanding this will help us avoid almost 90% of our mistakes because they are usually connected with ing. Let's work with this graph and have two common examples of mistakes. Again, we will talk about the same thing, that the number of openings dropped. So a lot of candidates write something, oh, the number of openings dropping in 2011, or the number of openings was dropped in 2011. Now let's break down both and use our knowledge here to prove with understanding, not because you learned by heart, but because you understood why the sentences are wrong. All right, we said we use ing only in two cases. Either when it is a noun that names action. Let me highlight this. Or when it is verb in present continuous, future continuous, past continuous. But we agreed that we don't use this in task 1. Alright, first let's check, is it a noun or not? Harakat bo'lyaptimi, bo'lmayaptimi? Yoki harakatni nomimi? Alright, here, harakat bo'lyapti. There is something happening here. This should be verb, not noun. The number of openings tushdi. Упал. Мы хотим сказать упал. Мы не хотим говорить падение. Мы хотим сказать упал. Biza tushish demoqchi emasmiz. Biza tushdi demoqchimiz. So bu harakat, harakatni nomi emas. It's not the name of the action. So basically it's not noun. So birinchi case, the first case is X. Let me put it here. Now let's check if it's continuous here. Continuous bo'lsa ham, even if it's continuous, it doesn't really look like continuous. When we use past continuous, we put was, then verb ing. When it's present continuous, we use am is are plus verb ing. And here it doesn't look present continuous or future continuous or past continuous at all. So this is basically simple noun, and we gotta remove ing and put dropped. That's it. Past simple. I have my noun, the number of openings. Nima qildi? Что сделал? Упал. Tushib ketdi. Just simple action. I don't need to put was or anything. Here, I already know it's in the past. I have verb. And the same can be said about the second example. Here, why do I need was? I already have my action. I just need to put my action in the past. I just need to say the number of openings dropped in 2011. And that's it. I cannot mix my state verb with my action verb. All right, let's work with one more example. This is a very common mistake. Let's say we'll have a category here, which is bought fresh coffee. Sotoya fresh coffee in last 4 weeks. Okupal. Coffee in last 4 weeks. This is this black category. All right. I want to say to что the percent was 45% here. Let's ignore everything else and let's imagine what we're going to ignore only for this video. We'll imagine this is the percent of bought fresh coffee. And people write here something like this. Bought fresh coffee was 45%. Now you may want to pause the video right now and see what problem does this sentence have and maybe try to fix it. The correct version here would be buying fresh coffee was 45%. Why? Because clearly this one here is verb. And after verb, I'm putting one more verb and then object. This absolutely doesn't make sense. English sentences don't work like this. First of all, we already agreed that we don't mix uh, action verbs with state verbs. And second of all, even if you translate it, this absolutely doesn't make sense. Покупал кофе было 45%. Сатывалды кофе 45% edi. Here, however, the candidate understands I cannot just put verb, 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 that I need to turn this into noun. And the candidate turns this into noun. Кофе satın alış 45% edi. Покупка кофе была 45%. And here, some candidates may have another mistake and skip was here, the state verb. In this case, what problem we see? Where is the time? How do I understand? Was it in the future? Was it in the past? There is no verb here. We agreed this is not verb. We put ing to nouns, not to verbs. We don't have continuous in task one. So there's no verb here. And I need it, so I put was to show that it happened in the past. Hopefully, this should make sense. In the same topic, you'll find quiz questions where you can practice using nouns and verbs accurately in IELTS Writing Task 1.